The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Well, greetings, listeners in listener land. This is Arnold Stricker. Mark Langston is on assignment in sunny Florida. He is soaking up the rays, and hopefully he will bring back some sunshine and some warmer weather to us. But you're listening to In Tune, and In Tune's a 2-hour weekly broadcast which focuses and reflects on issues that impact and connects our community and the greater St. Louis area. Our topics include the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, history, housing, humor, and justice. In studio today, we have Tony Parise, and Tony is, I read his bio, and I was like, we are in the presence of theater greatness and dancing greatness. He appeared in the first national tour of A Chorus Line. He began performing theatrically at the age of 10 in a production of Oliver with, for those of you who are as old as we are, Sid Caesar. Right. That's a really big deal. So he was on Broadway in 42nd Street, Me and My Girl, A City of Angels. He has directed or choreographed Hello, Dolly, starring Madeline Kahn, Where's Charlie, starring Joe Sullivan and Emily Lesser. Name, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, The Music Man, one of my favorite musicals, Crazy for You, Dames at Sea, South Pacific, Oliver, goes on and on and on. He's also done some off-Broadway. He's worked internationally, worked for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day celebration, the 100th anniversary, and the parade. And he has co-authored and directed Sophie, the Red Hot Mama Revusical. He's also writer and director for the St. Louis Teen Talent Competition and the St. Louis High School Musical Theater Awards. Welcome to In Tune, Tony.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We had you on because there's a big event coming. It's opening night, and it takes place in August 3 through 7, which kind of puts it away from the coronavirus situation. And you're still planning on having this.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what this entails, this opening night, because it's very fascinating.
Well, the program is called Next Stop Broadway.
Okay.
So it's a theater intensive 5 days for theater-loving kids, 10 to 18. No experience necessary. The only requirement is enthusiasm for musical theater. And we touch on just about everything you've said already across the spectrum of humanity. We touch on working together toward a common goal, which is opening night. Mm-hmm. So if you're part of Next Stop Broadway, you become part of an ensemble. I spent my entire Broadway career in the ensemble, and it was wonderful. I mean, I loved being there because you create your own characters. You have tons of costume changes, and you can be all these people and create your own worlds. And it's the backbone of any Broadway show is the ensemble. Maybe unsung heroes. I don't know if you've noticed the ensemble when you go to the Fox, but they're there.
Right.
And without them, the show would be really empty.
That's correct. There's a lot of people that go into making a production take place just besides the people on stage.
Right. And from the ensemble, you get your understudies. So, sometimes you'll see one of the ensemble people in the leads if someone's out sick or anything. But our program is centered around the ensemble. We take 100 theater-loving kids, and we put them together to do a spectacular opening night on the Friday. But the program is only Monday through Friday.
And what's the time frame of that? They're like 8 to 5 or something like that?
9 a.m. We start warm up every day at 9 a.m.
Okay.
And we release the cast members at 5 p.m. every day.
Okay. Very good. And so go through a little bit about what specifically they would be doing each day.
Well, each day is, there's process and there's product. So we have the product, which is our show on Friday, the opening night, right? But we get the process every day. We rehearse. There are vocal rehearsals, dance rehearsals, acting rehearsals. We go through a read-through of the script. We then do the blocking. So it's a condensed Broadway rehearsal period. Just sort of, it's an authentic Broadway experience for these kids, and it's full on. It's amazing. I've done it in other cities, and it's taken me a very long time to finally get it to my hometown here. So I'm very excited to offer this to St. Louis kids. And as I say, it is not required that you have a formal training at all. I'm not alone in this. I have a staff of 10 Broadway professionals that I'm bringing from New York to St. Louis to conduct this with me.
So this is going to be held down at the Fox.
It is through the Fox Performing Arts Charity Foundation, and our website has everything you need to know about how to register and where it's going to take place and all of those things. So that's www.foxpacf.org. Correct,
and you can find information about program fees. There are scholarships available there too. As I look at this, it's again. Performers age 10 to 18, all skill levels. So, like you said, you don't have to have this. You don't have to be the perfect singer, the perfect dancer, or an orator who can come in and just gonna nail it. You just have to love Broadway.
And we'll give you this experience, and we design the program for success. So there's. We see who the kids are, we direct and choreograph to their skill sets. It's amazing, and you won't understand it until you've been there and you see it, because it's a ball of energy. And the beginning of the week on Monday, we see a lot of kids who are maybe shy and afraid or tentative, and by Friday they are all just Broadway stars, and it's magical, and it's a wonderful experience.
And this is the first time this has happened?
Here in St. Louis.
Right.
It will be.
And you've been in other cities. Which other cities have you been in?
Providence, Rhode Island, which has the Providence Performing Arts Center that's much like the Fox in scope. And last year we did our first year in Durham, North Carolina.
Wow.
So there's a beautiful theater, brand new theater there that we did it in, and we sold out there in 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was just gone. And this year, because it's returning there, we sold out in about 90 minutes.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, we have a great return rate.
Now, I know the answer to this from my perspective, but why is this important? And then why is it important for this area?
Well, it is definitely a fact that kids who have an arts education do better in school for
correct.
many reasons. Because it's based in the ensemble, we get kids supporting each other, working together toward a common goal. It's amazing to see the support. We do too many classic Broadway shows, so the younger kids do a show and the older kids do a show that we put together with an opening number and things. So it's a jam-packed afternoon on Friday. But when you see the little kids watch the older kids show, and they cheer for each other, it's just amazing.
Neat. That's neat. Now you're no stranger to doing this. You've done this your entire life, starting at age 10.
Right.
And take us back. When did this bug hit you that you were like really enthused by this? Was it dance? Was it singing? What was it?
Dance. It was dance.
Okay.
I was enrolled in dancing school when I was 7.
Okay.
And 2 years later, it was clear to everybody and myself that I took to it, and I was kind of a natural at it. And then when I was 10, I auditioned for the children's chorus of the Muni, which is back then very different than the Muni kids. Had nothing to do with that. Out of hundreds of kids, only 20 were selected, and we actually got a stipend and got paid. I have some pay stubs from back then that I still have. I mean, I don't know, it was like maybe $50 a week or something.
Still, back then, that's pretty good money.
But we felt very special, the kids, and there are many kids that I still are in touch with, like Ron Gibbs, who's over at Webster now,
Right.
was in the children's chorus with me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was in the children's chorus for 3 years. So 10, 11, and 12. And then when you get to be 13, 14, that's when that, you're no longer a child.
Right.
But we were in many productions at the Muni for those 3 years. And it kind of informed my whole life. I mean, I worked with huge stars, and I worked in a professional environment. And because we were getting paid, we were expected to be professional. So that's why I say I did my first professional show when I was 10 years old, because it's absolutely true.
Right. So you were working through your kind of perfecting your dance, your ability, and honing your skills as you're going through high school, which, he's from St. Louis, folks, by the way. And so I said, I won't ask you the question, but he said
Southwest.
And there we go. And so you get to high school, and did you perform at Southwest?
I did. Southwest had a great musical program, and we did huge musicals. Lee Meyer was our music teacher, and she was kind of famous in that time here, and she taught tons and tons of generations of kids. But we did 4 big musicals, 1 a year, and I actually choreographed all 4.
Wow.
And I was in them all as well.
Wow.
So like we did Brigadoon, I was Harry Beaton. We did Mame, I was Ito in Mame.
Okay. So how do you get from Southwest High, and then you end up being on Broadway in 42nd Street in the national tour of A Chorus Line? Give us that linkage there. How does that occur?
Well, it's a kind of a long story. I'm going to try to get to the points that make sense. When A Chorus Line was here in St. Louis at either Kiel Auditorium at the time, or the American, one of the two, they had held an audition, and I think I was 16 at the time or something like that. And they said, your ballet is great. Work on your jazz dancing, and if you ever get to New York, call us. Kind of, that was the sort of thing.
The gist of it.
So anyway, as it turned out, a couple of years later, the New York City Ballet was coming through with a tour for an audition for the School of American Ballet in New York City.
Okay.
And they offered me a complete, full scholarship.
Holy smokes.
To New York City Ballet. And this is when George Balanchine was still alive. I took class from George Balanchine in the same class as Baryshnikov and Peter Martins. They were in my men's class. But I hated it. I absolutely hated that world. It was joyless. It was cutthroat. I mean, all the books that you've read about the ballet world, that's all true.
Wow.
And I improved greatly, but it wasn't joyful.
Yeah.
And so I developed a psychosomatic knee injury. And the ballet people said, go back to St. Louis and heal. And when you're ready to come back, we'll have you back. And they wrote me a check for $345 to get myself back to St. Louis. So I opened a bank account at Citibank with the $345, and I got out the Yellow Pages, which I'm not sure if anybody knows what the Yellow Pages were.
Yeah.
And I looked up the Schubert Theater in New York, because I didn't even know where the Schubert Theater was. And I just randomly called the Schubert Theater where Chorus Line was playing, and I said, I auditioned in St. Louis, and they said to call when I got to New York, and now I'm in New York. And whoever it was said, well, actually, there's going to be an audition next Thursday here in New York. Why don't you come? So I went to that audition, and they hired me. And 2 weeks later, I was on the national tour of A Chorus Line, and my knee was magically healed.
Wow. That's a crazy, incredible story. People don't believe those things happen like that.
Yeah.
But they do.
So I was with A Chorus Line for a full year, and we toured all over the country. And I said, you know what? I love this, but I didn't go to New York to be on the road.
Right.
So I quit. And everybody thought I was insane. They just thought I was nuts. Why would you quit?
Yeah, this is the best gig.
You could have this gig for the next 20 years if you wanted.
Yeah.
But I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to New York. I went back to New York. There was the audition for 42nd Street. Gower Champion was making his return to Broadway. I went to the audition and got it. And 3 months later, I was in rehearsals for the original 42nd Street on Broadway.
Wow.
Yeah.
An original cast member, folks. That's a rarity.
You can see me on the album if anybody has their old vinyl.
Vinyl, what's that? What's that? You have to go to some of the
it's very
records.
popular now.
Yeah, oh yeah. We're talking to Tony Parise. He is a dancer, a theatrical performer, and began at the age of 10 and appeared in the first national tour of A Chorus Line, and as he just mentioned, was in Broadway on 42nd Street. He is also a director and choreographer, and we're going to get into that, but he's here to talk about Next Stop Broadway and that particular group of 100 kids that will meet in August. Matter of fact, they will meet August 3 through 7 of this year. And if you're interested in that, folks, you can go to www.foxpacf.org. That's foxpacf.org, and you can get information there about the fees and how you can sign up, etc., like that. So, I guess, Tony, one of my interesting questions I've had when I was reading about you was everybody has some kind of story that really stands out to them, or working with some actor that has had an impact. And I read some things about when you choreographed Hello, Dolly, and some of the interactions with Madeline Kahn that some people had with her, and you weren't quite sure about that. And I'm not trying to steer you in this direction, but what stands out over the course of your career in working with a wide variety of people? Stories that, wow, yeah, I remember that, and they did this, and we had this kind of connection, or they were so genuinely nice. What stands out to you over your career?
Well, I loved Madeline Kahn. We became really good buddies. In fact, I was supposed to just choreograph it and then leave, and Madeline insisted that I come on the tour, just as kind of her coach, and. It was wonderful because Hello, Dolly is one of those shows that if your name is above the title, the audience is coming expecting to see Madeline Kahn.
Right.
And I was able to make her understand that she was a consummate actor. So she wanted to play Dolly Levi. And I said, Madeline, they're here to see you, So she managed to get in a descant, an obligato of Ah, Sweet Mystery of Life over the Hello, Dolly reprise, which was, just wonderful. If you know Young Frankenstein.
She was being Madeline.
She was being Madeline. And after that tour, she got the Tony Award for Sisters Rosenzweig on Broadway. And she said to me, if it wasn't for that Hello, Dolly summer tour, I would never have been able to get that Tony Award. Wow. Because it gave her permission to be Madeline Kahn in a role. And that's something that, in the old days, Ethel Merman, Bert Lahr, they all came from vaudeville.
Right.
So when they did roles on Broadway, they were actually their own personas, their personalities, they were doing their act in the show. It's gone so far from that now, but that was a great story. And I have a story about Dolores Gray in 42nd Street. Dolores Gray was a 50s glamorous movie actress, whatever.
Right.
Political correct term.
Right.
And she used to, I'll wrap this up, but she used to do all of the dances as Dorothy Brock in the wings that when we would be on stage. Dolores Gray would be in the wings sort of dancing along with us. Wow. And one day, I said, Miss Gray, because that's how you spoke to people then, I see that you do all the dances with us. I said, oh, did you get your start in the chorus? And she looked at me and she said, heavens, no. And I thought I had insulted her. And she said, I was never good enough to be in the chorus.
You thought you were going to get hammered.
Yeah. So back to the chorus and back to the ensemble again. And that's, that's my passion, my love.
Well, I want to talk to you after our break about choreography and what it takes to choreograph a show, how you block things, what you think about, what kind of movement you draw upon, whether you draw upon movement that's based upon the music or what's going on in the action or things like that. These are, I'm not a dancer, I'm a musician, so I kind of look at it from a different viewpoint. But we've got people out there maybe who are dancers or who are artists, or maybe just they don't do any of that, and they're just kind of curious about that. So I'm kind of interested in about that. So we're talking to Tony Parise. He's going to be heading up Next Stop Broadway, which is going to be occurring in August 3 through 7, and that is for young performers of age 10 through 18 of all skill levels. They're invited to register for this week-long performing arts program, which is taught by a variety of Broadway professionals, and it culminates in an opening night performance for family and friends, followed by, I love this, followed by a cast party.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. And so you can get more information about that. Go to foxpacf.org, foxpacf.org. And those registration and program fees, etc., like I said, or you can call Metrotix. Is that correct?
Yes.
314-534-1111. So Tony's resume is extremely... It's huge, and everything I read here, I was like, okay, I've seen that. I may not have seen it on Broadway, but I've seen it either on the big screen or I've seen it on a kind of a television kind of deal. And we want to delve into some more things with you coming up after the break. This is Arnold Stricker of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Hey, we're amped up here. Welcome back to In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker. Mark Langston is on assignment in Florida watching the Cardinals. Of course, they're not playing any longer because that season has been canceled or postponed. And so who knows when opening day is going to be. It might be the day before the World Series. We never know when that...
I hope we're winning.
yeah, we may have the undefeated record at that time. So we're talking to Tony Parise. He's from Next Stop Broadway, which is a wonderful kind of program that's going to be happening August 3 through 7th of this summer. And it's for young performers of age 10 through 18 of all skill levels. They're invited to participate in this week-long classes, workshops, and rehearsals focused on classic Broadway shows. And the staff of Broadway professionals is going to teach some songs and some choreography and from the golden age of Broadway. So that'll be, what's the golden age of Broadway, Tony? What do you consider it?
Well, I believe that 42nd Street was the last great golden age musical, and I was fully a part of it. We're talking Guys and Dolls,
right,
and Fiddler on the Roof, and we're talking the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe.
Right.
I mean, 42nd Street was 1980, but David Merrick was the sole producer, and he was certainly of the golden age of Broadway. He produced the first Hello, Dolly.
Right.
And Gower Champion directed and choreographed Hello, Dolly, originally with Carol Channing. So I feel like I was in on the very last of the golden age of Broadway, and I love the golden age musicals. I feel like I want to keep them alive, and I want to keep the kids knowing where Hamilton came from, because Lin-Manuel talks about that. He says, he did Albert in his high school production of Bye Bye Birdie, and he studied the golden age of Broadway, and everything in Hamilton correlates to how a Broadway show was crafted in the golden age.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
So emulating the style and kind of the format.
This is my Billy Bigelow, soliloquy. And he talks about that. But kids don't know the source material or the reference. Right. And I think it's really important for moving forward to know what your history is. So when I introduce these kids to the golden age of Broadway, they're hearing it for the first time, thinking it's the coolest thing they ever heard.
Wow.
You know, I think us, you're like, oh yeah, the Music Man. We know the Music Man.
Right.
But the kids don't. They know the modern things, Dear Evan Hansen and things like that, which has a whole different tone. It's a whole different feel. It's, I love the romance of the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
I love the tunes.
Right.
There's an old jazz tune called "I Like to Recognize the Tune." Mel Torme sings it. I'm with him.
That's
I like
right.
to recognize the tune.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
Music Man, one of my favorites. I remember watching Robert Preston and Shirley Jones do the movie.
Right.
And matter of fact, my parents had bought the record, so I think I still have all that in my memory banks.
Yeah.
About all that. And I was looking on break and noticed that Six Flags was suspending their. They're not even started yet, but they're suspending something out there. Mm-hmm. And I had talked about the performances out there, and you said,
well, I was one of them for a summer. The summer that I was 17 years old. We did a show called Sing-sation 77. And it was a wonderful, wonderful show. It actually sort of made me have to sing. It was still an ensemble show, but we each had our turn at front and center, and we did songs from Broadway and popular songs. We had a lot of groupies and fans that came over and over and over and saw us.
Yeah, because that's when you could buy that ticket, and it wasn't too far. I know some of my high school friends would, and if they're listening, they would hop a freight train to get out there and then hop a freight train back into St. Louis for their transportation, but would spend all day out there.
Yeah, well, we did 5 shows a day, 5 days a week, and the 6th day we did 10 shows a day.
Oh, my gosh.
And then the 7th day we rested.
No kidding. It collapsed.
So,
more like it.
Yeah, I mean, it also taught me that, that the stamina.
Pacing and stamina.
Stamina, keeping it fresh, because on the 4th and 5th show of the day, if you started out tired, you still had to give the same performance the 4th and 5th time of the day that you did the first time.
So that brings me to an interesting question, that in that kind of situation, or when you've done a chorus line for so long, how do you, obviously you're trying to, people out there are going to be seeing this for the first time, so they don't want to see, my second best. They want to see my best. But how do you, it is an energy and a psychological, you have to kind of pump yourself up to get out there and go, the 6th time that you've done it? Or
yeah, well.
How do you do it?
Well, I first of all, I love it. So, there's a passion that happens. Going back to classic, now Chorus Line didn't have an overture, but the overture, listening to it is so exciting, in other shows. Like 42nd Street has a great overture. The City of Angels that I did on Broadway had the greatest overture. There wasn't a dance step in the entire show, but I would dance the overture every night that I went on. There's just nothing like live performance and what's going to happen tonight. I mean, not only is it new for the audience, but the audience's response makes you have to do things in a different way, or, ooh, they didn't get that joke, or, ooh.
Right.
So it is it's a two-way street, and that's what's great about live performance is you get out there to do your best, and the audience responds, and then you respond to the audience's response. So it's an energy that can't be replicated in a film situation.
That's an excellent point. That's a really excellent point. And I want to kind of move to the question I was asking prior to the break that I wanted you to think about. Let's talk a little about the choreography that you've done, and how do you go about blocking? How do you go about determining what kind of steps you do and things like that to the music? Where does that all come from? Does that come from, I remember doing those things in my past, or, are you keeping things fresh? What's going through your mind? It's kind of like a composer.
Well, I think it all starts with the source material, the story, the storyline, and the music. Where are these characters going? What's the story we need to tell? When we start, should be one A, and where we're going should be B, C, D, E, F, whatever it is. What's the transition? What do we learn through the dance? Then the time period and where we're at. I mean, you're going to choreograph Carousel a lot different than you're going to choreograph Chicago.
Right.
For instance, the feel, the mood. But I love going hand in hand with the music. I feel like a lot of choreography these days is in spite of the music. The music should come alive through the choreography, and the audience should hear the music better because they're seeing the choreography.
That's a great point.
And if it's choreography that could be done to any music, then it doesn't capture the audience to me. So it all comes from the story.
And was there a specific teacher or group of teachers or choreographers that you worked with that really inspired you or gave you, really developed that passion for that you wanted to do that?
Well, I got to say that I studied Gower Champion intensely through the rehearsal process. And if you go back and look at his work, it's very simple. It's very simple, but incredibly elegant, incredibly perfect for the moment. It's visual. So I got a lot of inspiration from Gower Champion and how he approached choreography.
Okay.
He wasn't a tap dancer, and yet he choreographed 42nd Street.
Wow. What?
He had two assistants that did the steps, but he had the vision, and it's all very visual in his world.
That's very interesting. Kind of a complete. I really enjoyed your analogy, your thought on that the dance it should be a marriage with the music, and it should be the visual representation of the music and enhance what people are hearing, rather than working against it. I thought that was a very interesting point.
Right. Now, when you're lucky enough to work with a orchestrator and a composer, which I have been, the music then can go with what you're doing.
Right.
So I've choreographed the other way around, where I've said to the composer or the orchestrator, take a look at the sequence that I've just done. And the orchestrator goes, ooh, we'll add some strings in there. We'll make a percussion sound on that move, So that's very exciting too, but not many people get to work that way around.
Yeah.
The music usually comes first.
Right. We're talking to Tony Parise, who is from Next Stop Broadway here in St. Louis. If you want more information about that, it's foxpac, PACF.org, foxpac.org. So some of your friends that you're bringing in, the Broadway professionals, dancers, singers, lighting, costume?
No, I have a staff of 2 choreographers, 2 musical directors, and then 4 leading players.
Okay.
So the 4 leading players are 20-somethings who are out there auditioning and in tours and in shows. So they bring sort of the bridge the gap. I call the senior staff.
Yeah.
So the leading players also play the leads in the shows that we're doing this summer.
Okay.
So they get very close with the kids, and they're working actually with the kids. But my music directors have done Broadway tours, Broadway shows, been in the pit, been conducting. My choreographers actually have been dancers as well. Now they're choreographers. So it's kind of passing down all of our collective knowledge and our collective experiences. And the kids get very interested in hearing all these stories.
Yeah, so a question I ask of artists or musicians or dancers or people who participate in the arts is, kids who are coming up, what advice do you give them? You know, if you had to boil it down to a couple things, what advice would you tell them to, if they want to go into the business?
If they want to go into the business has changed a lot from when I was there. First of all, you didn't, when I went, you did not go to college for being on Broadway.
Right.
You went to Broadway if you wanted to be on Broadway. It seems now that college is the route because the people who are hiring are looking at those resumes. So it seems important now. Your relationships, how you treat other people, all of that, we all talk to each other.
Right.
So if you are a nice person, if you take notes well, if your words are yes and
rather than yes but.
Yeah, or no but.
Yeah.
And learn everything you can learn. It's definitely triple threat now. When I went, it was a little more, if you were a dancer, you were a dancer. If you were a singer, you're a singer. Now you've got to be a triple threat.
Triple threat being?
You have to sing as well as you dance. You have to dance as well as you act, and round and round. And
that's a real challenge.
Well, economically speaking, Broadway shows are shrinking. There aren't huge ensembles and choruses now.
Right.
So, you have to hold up your end of the vocals. And if you can't dance, there's no movement in the show. So you have to dance, and then you're the understudy. If not a small bit part, you're an understudy. So you have to act.
Do you see a renaissance of some of the Golden Age shows coming back?
I do, but unfortunately, the people who are directing them don't trust the material.
Really? How is that?
Well, just like this West Side Story revival now, I haven't seen it. I've heard, I've read. There's huge projections now, this multimedia thing. And so the audience, instead of getting involved with the characters on the stage who are live people, are watching a face of one of the actors that's 10 times larger than they are. And so you're not involved like you should be.
Right. That makes sense.
And if they just trust the material, like, this is what it is, let the audience just be there and experience the live people on the stage.
Because I think we're kind of caught up with technology and all the things that we're doing that maybe I'm just presuming now that maybe directors think that has to be there, or that's a different interpretation based upon the time where that happens, rather than that live performance.
Right. And if it's honest, if it's sincere, and you just say the words and sing the songs, the audience will be there with you.
Yeah, they stand by themselves. They've stood the course of time.
Right. I do agree in cutting, making it tighter, shorter, because the Golden Age, that's what you did for an evening, is go out to the theater.
Right.
So shows were 3 and 3.5 hours long.
Right.
So maybe that, in that aspect, you don't have to do all the reprises. But again, popular music came from Broadway.
That's correct.
So all the reprises were to put the tunes in your head so that you would want that on the radio. So it's a whole different set of economics,
Right. Right.
But when you go back to do those Golden Age, don't chop it up and throw away the heart, is my advice to those people who take these shows into their hands and want to make them modern.
And you say that from experience because you've directed.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
you're not just saying that as somebody who has been on Broadway or somebody who's choreographed on Broadway. You've directed, and so you know that perspective that, you know, things can either be enhanced or, frankly, it can be a detraction.
Right. And I always go back to the material. And I say, what is in this material that's going to make this relevant today? Because who doesn't want romance?
Right.
You know, who doesn't want hope?
Right.
And there are lessons too, but not heavy-handed lessons.
Right.
You know, there's enough depression and tragedy and you know, angst in the world that we don't need to explore it in musical form.
Right.
You know, in my opinion.
I understand
this is
that.
just my opinion.
Right. Which is one reason Hello, Dolly is your favorite musical.
Oh, the book is. I weep when Cornelius is talking about the most wonderful day of his life. I mean, I just go, oh my God.
So we were talking off air. We've probably got about 8 minutes, Chris, and we were talking off air about what the dancing does to your body.
Oh.
And how much dancing do you do anymore? I know, you know, as I can't sit here very long, I have to stand up.
Absolutely.
Because my knees, they crack and they, you know, it sounds like somebody's shredding, you know, I don't know, potato chips when I bend my knees. But what did it do to your body? And do you still enjoy dancing, or do you do much dancing?
I try to move as much as I can because, you know, use it or lose it. Obviously, I'm not dancing like I did.
Mm-hmm.
But all those years of tap dancing is very punishing on the knees and all the high kicks for the hips.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that I would feel it as much as I do.
Right.
But you just got to. I can't let that win. I have to keep moving.
Right.
You know, and it's a cruel, cruel thing that when you're my age and you really understand what dancing should be and what it is, you can't do it any longer.
You can't demonstrate it.
You can't demonstrate the actual physical thing. It's kind of cruel. It's a paradox.
Well, you could say, hey, look at that video recording of me doing that.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I want to be able to do that knowing what I know now.
I understand that. You know, the fingers don't work so well on the clarinet anymore.
Right.
Because they just don't work as well.
But that's also why I want to inspire young kids, and I want to inspire people who love musical theater. I want to inspire them. Hopefully want to just, you know, take what I know and say, think about all of these things, and now do that time step.
Well, and you're pushing that energy in that direction, and for these 100 kids at Next Stop Broadway are going to experience an unbelievable time in August. You know, I can tell.
And I get up there and do every single thing I ask them to do. I do it. We start in the morning with the warm up. I do the warm up. I conduct the warm up. The warm-up ends with 100 jumping jacks. I do those 100 jumping jacks.
Chris, can you do 100 jumping jacks?
I haven't tried in about 30 years. Maybe.
But the kids' energy feeds me.
Right.
And because they see me do it, they want to do it.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of this wonderful, wonderful ball of energy that I just love. And I'm 18 all over again when I'm in front of those kids.
So do you do like we see on TV, and a 1, 2, 3, 4? Do you do that?
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I think
We're like, okay, we're going to do this routine, and 1, 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember Robert Preston's Chicken Fat? Do you know about that?
No.
It was a record that we had in physical education in elementary school, and he narrated and sang the song called Chicken Fat. And you do burpees, and you do jumping jacks, and you do all these. It was just to kind of go, you chicken fat, go. So all my elementary classmates will remember that vividly. Closing thoughts about Next Stop Broadway.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be able to offer it up to these lucky 100 kids who sign up first. to be there. And I look forward to meeting them, inspiring them. I look forward to being inspired by them. And hopefully it'll become a tradition that we do every year, and we'll have many, many returning cast members.
What a tremendous thing that you're doing by doing this and giving another generation a skill set and a focus, because I think, Tony, your focus is something that is needed.
Yeah.
It's something that has been missing in the arts. I'm getting emotional because what I sense in what you said and what I hear you say, getting the story. What's the music telling me? What's the story telling me? And putting that out there and giving it your all, and how you do that, and your interactions with people, and all of those things are what make average dancers or singers or musicians into better than average. And maybe they don't have that skill set, but they've developed other things that have elevated them to be at another level, where people might have the natural skill set to do that, but they lack in some of those other areas, which detracts from their actual performance.
Well, and the other thing that I'm very proud of is I've taken out all components of competition. This 5 days has no competitive aspect.
It's about three words, right? Or three letters, right? F-U-N?
Fun, joy. I
Joy.
hope joy is better than fun.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, the joy of exploring and living through music and dance. We need it.
Yes. Thanks very much for coming on the show today. Appreciate it. Tony Parise, who is giving 100 kids this summer a great, joyful time, August 3 through 7 of 2020, and Next Stop Broadway. If you want more information on that, folks, go to www.foxpacf.org, and it's first come, first serve, foxpacf.org. And you're going to learn from Broadway professionals. You're going to participate in an opening night performance. You're going to listen to and be able to recreate some things from the golden age of Broadway. And if you don't know what the golden age of Broadway is, that's something to Google, or go look up Hello, Dolly. And that's one of the golden age shows, or The Music Man.
Right.
Or West Side Story.
Yes, the original.
The original West Side Story, right, the original one. So we're grateful that Tony was able to spend some time with us with his great career being a Broadway dancer, choreographer, and director. Thanks again, Tony. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.